Hey, how's it going? As you can see, I'm color coordinated. So anyway, I wanted to talk to you about something incredibly serious, which is the state of the Ukrainian nation because of this conflict. This, I think, is something that not enough people are paying attention to. They're just paying attention to the conflict and where's the fighting going on and the doodads and weapons and stuff like that. But they're not paying attention to the thing that actually matters, which is the state of the Ukraine nation because of this conflict. Now, before the war started, Wikipedia said that Ukraine had 45 million people. Okay, let's just take that figure as a given for the sake of argument. Now, 45 million people, but since the start of the conflict, the area that the Russians have captured, i.e. the four oblasts of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, those are now part of the Russian Federation, and the Russians are never going to let them go. Because however long this conflict goes on, it could end today, it can end in 5 years or 10 years. The Russians are never going to let go of those four regions of Ukraine. And they're going to fight to the death. They've said so. And insofar as Crimea is concerned, same thing. They are going to hold on to those territories forever. And those five areas, Crimea, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Lugansk, and Donetsk, those account for about 9 million people. So right off the bat, you take that 45 million figure and you cut out 9 million. You're left with 36 million people. But then you have to add on to that the approximately 15 million people who have so far left because of the conflict. That's how many refugees have fled Ukraine. 15 million. And these are according to United Nations Human Rights Commission findings. Approximately 4 million of these have gone to Russia, and the other 11 million have gone to Western Europe and points beyond. So you take that 36 million figure and you subtract 15 million, how many are you left with? 21 million. That's how many people live in the territory of Ukraine that is currently controlled by the Kiev regime. 21 million people. And of those 15 million who have fled, how many will return? Well, we won't know until it actually happens, right? But this conflict has gone on for over a year. We're coming up on a year and 2 months. A year and 2 months as I'm recording this video. And so, there have been a lot of studies and a lot of polling. And in Poland, the polling, please excuse the malapropism, but it can't be helped. The polling of Ukrainian refugees in Poland says that only about a third would be willing to return to Ukraine. Because, of course, these people have fled Ukraine to Western Europe and to Russia, and they've set up lives for themselves. They have jobs, they have romantic attachments, they have places to live, their homes now. I mean, it's been over a year. And the catastrophic thing is that, a lot of these people who have left, the majority of whom, are women and older people. The women in particular. They went to Europe, they went to Russia, and I'm sure a lot of them have found some nice fella, while the military-age men in Ukraine could not leave the country unless they were willing to pay exorbitant bribes to leave. And so the women, who are, of course, the demographic future of any nation, they've probably found jobs, apartments, homes, what have you, and they found some nice guy in Denmark, Germany, Poland, wherever. And what are they going to do? They're probably going to settle down there. Why would they uproot themselves if they found a nice guy and perhaps marry the guy and settle down? Why would they uproot themselves to come back to Ukraine that has been devastated by war? Of course, the actual physical devastation is fairly limited. Don't let people fool you. The number of civilian casualties in this conflict, while extremely high, it's about 10,000 people who have been killed as collateral damage, if you will, of this conflict. That is a very small number for the scale and scope of this conflict. which has accounted for the deaths of at least 250,000 men on both sides. And so you see the issue. See, the country is not physically devastated, but it is spiritually and certainly economically devastated. And so why would people who are in Europe or in Russia come back to Ukraine once the conflict is over? Even if the conflict were to end right now, Ukraine has lost over half its population. And those people, most of them, will never come back. And if there are no economic opportunities for Ukraine, even fewer of them will come back. And so Ukraine has been destroyed. Because ultimately a nation is built of its people. It's not the land. The land is where they live, but what we're talking about are people. And the people who remain, young men who have fought in the war, and many of them severely injured and wounded, injured in ways that will be life-altering, and the elderly, the young, children, women, they've all left and they're not coming back. It's a terrible thing to consider the death of a nation, because this is the death of the Ukraine nation. The Ukraine nation, after this conflict, even if it were to end right now with the losses of those 4 oblasts plus Crimea, that, you know, a lot of pro-Kiev regime propagandists say, oh, we'll take back Crimea. Oh, come on, grow up. It's never going to happen. And this, you know, vaunted offensive, they keep postponing it. Why do you think they keep postponing it? Because they don't have what it takes to win. And more likely than not, all those poor young men who are thrown into this offensive, they're going to be killed or wounded in horrible ways that will affect their entire lives. The Ukraine nation has been killed already, is the point I'm trying to make. And it's horrifying. I mean, no fooling around. To think of a nation, the flower of its youth, either killed in the war or fled to better prospects in Europe. I mean, that's the thing that I despise so much about the Zelensky regime. You know? Because they could have ended this and not destroyed their own country. And what I'm telling you was predictable. It was extremely predictable. If a conflict goes on this long, the people aren't going to return. And they could have settled this back in April of 2022, just 2 months after the start of this conflict. And it was because of the Washington warmongers who told Zelensky, if you sign any kind of ceasefire settlement with the Russians, we'll quit our support of you. We'll quit the money that we're sending you. And so Zelensky did as his paymasters told him to do. He continued this conflict needlessly. And all the tens of thousands, over 100,000 killed, that was all for nothing. It just breaks my heart. But I figured that somebody ought to be paying attention to what actually matters about this conflict, the future of Ukraine. Ukraine has no future.